right here. You condemn yourself by the words you just gave.
You have to change everything. With that being said, you've explained this to me 1,000 times. I think I called you like 4 times on this. I'm still trying to figure it out, only because Romans chapter 7, and I'd like to go there real quickly. I want to go there real quickly, and we need to try to understand it. I'm not quite clear exactly how Paul is managing Romans chapter 7 in the context of marriage. But look. So do you not know, brothers and sisters, for I am speaking to those who know the law. Very important statement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's speaking to people who understand Torah, not a lay person from the Greek world who did not understand Torah. He says that the law is the Lord over a person. It's kind of alluding to Exodus 21.
Yeah.
As long as he lives, marriage stuff. For a married woman is bound by law to her husband as long as he lives. But if her husband dies, she is released from the law of marriage. So then if she is joined to another man while her husband is alive, she will be called an adulteress. But if her husband dies, she is free from the law. And if she is joined to another.
Notice something very important right here. It says she's free from that law. It's not free from the law, it's free from that law. And so it's speaking about a specific law, and the specific law that's being spoken of is Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 1 through 4. And something that I don't think they mention in here, but if you go to Jeremiah chapter 3, at the beginning of the chapter 3, now we often go to, kind of further down, verses 6 through 8 or 10, right in there where God divorces the house of Israel, did not divorce the house of Judah. But at the very beginning of it, Jeremiah specifically looks at this, and he's talking to the sages, the elders, and he's saying, or it's Yahweh through Jeremiah, or however. The point is he's saying that once a woman is divorced and sent away, she cannot be rejoined to her husband if she's been joined to another. But Yahweh says, but there's a mystery that I have the ability to solve. And that is the point that through Yeshua, who I believe is the one who stood on Mount Sinai and made the covenant, when Yeshua dies, he terminates that covenant, the initial covenant, and then he's raised in newness of life, and she can be rejoined to him in newness of life and be recovenanted to him. Now, these guys are going to talk about this a little bit, but I don't think they go the direction that this passage actually speaks to. They're trying to explain it away. Let's see what happens.
The man, she is not an adulteress. So the Torah itself is telling you that divorce was permissible.
Right. And not only that, well, it's not so much that, it's that, to me,
I'm not sure this says divorce is permissible. I was thinking about this the other day. Released from the law of marriage, joined to another while her husband is alive. Okay, but if her husband dies, she's free from that law. And if she is joined to another man, she's not an adulteress. Okay, what this does tell us is that adultery is when a married woman is joined to another man, right? See? A married woman is bound by law to her husband, but if her so what we understand from this passage that she's bound by law to her husband, right? If, however, she goes to another man while she is alive, she's called an adulteress. This is the definition of adultery. Paul, this is the second witness to Leviticus chapter 20, verse 10. It specifically is defining for us what adultery is. It's not telling us about divorce, okay? It's not dealing with divorce, and it's not even telling us that divorce is possible. We do know that from Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 1 through 4, and it's exampled by the Most High in Jeremiah chapter 3, verses 6 through 10, where it specifically says that he gave a certificate of divorce and sent away the house of Israel, but he did not divorce the house of Judah, even though she dealt more treacherously. Okay, so I think they get off track right here because they're trying to get something about divorce out of this, and it's not here.
He's giving you a basic statement that is sort of a summary of laws. And by the way, the law in Deuteronomy 24 is so specific. It's a case study. Here, this is generic. In general, because if you think about it, it says a married woman is bound by law to her husband. Okay, as long as you live. Well, of course, the reverse is also true.
False. That is false. Okay, what they're going to... Nowhere in Scripture ever will you find that the reverse is also true. Just because Yahweh or Yeshua is married to the ecclesia doesn't mean that he can't go get another assembly, another ecclesia. Okay? Just because Jacob was bound to Leah through a covenant of blood, she was a virgin, he took her, it's a covenant of blood, does not mean that he can't go get Rachel. He did. What you're saying is that he's an adulterer. And Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9 says that adulterers will not inherit the kingdom. But Yeshua in Matthew chapter 8, verse 11 specifically says that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob will recline at the table in the kingdom. So, we have a problem here, Mark. Here's your problem. Your problem is that either Paul is lying, or Yeshua is lying, or you are lying. Somebody's got it wrong. Want to know where I'm going to put my money? I'm pretty sure that it's not going to be on Yeshua or Paul. The bottom line is this. A man can have more than one wife. Period. The law is structured this way. We see it over and over and over all the way through the law, and there's not a single word breathed against it. And Rico even agreed with it. He already agreed with it. Says he doesn't like it, but he agreed with it. So, it doesn't work both ways, Mark. It does not work both ways. Sorry. Shalom, shalom, guys. We interrupt this broadcast in order to give you a real quick update on the situation with Brother Rico Cortes. I wanted to let you know that he and I have had a conversation. We had a long conversation this morning, and the basic shot of the conversation is that he contends that he had that he did not delete any comments from the website, and he only became aware of my video the day that the second video was published in the afternoon. And so what was interesting is that immediately after there was a little bit of an exchange yesterday, suddenly about 30, maybe 40 new comments appeared on the video. And so apparently it wasn't just a couple comments that were not available to the viewer, but miraculously they all showed up. Now, Mr. Cortes, I believe, is stating the truth when he says that he did not delete those. However, his site is not managed by him. Somebody else takes care of and pays attention to the comments. So I don't know whether, he contends that YouTube was hiding comments from roughly 12 different men that had commented on the site, and apparently all of those were being blocked. It was interesting. It is interesting that all of those comments were dissenting comments, and none of the comments that agreed with the view of the original video had been blocked. So anyway, maybe YouTube, maybe somebody else. Don't know. We can't be sure of that. However, according to Brother Rico Cortes, he did not delete those comments. And so if I offended him for stating that he deleted the comments, I do believe, though, that he owns the ministry and he owns the website. And I do believe that he is the responsible authority as the head of the ministry and the head of that house. Yes, a question? Yes. Oh, my shirt. Yes. My shirt says polygyny is sin. Second Opinions 3:16. You can get one of those down in the merch store. And those who say that polygyny is sin, all they're doing is giving you their opinions. And if you listen to the rest of this video, you will find out that that's exactly what you get, is a lot of opinion. All right, back to the regular scheduled broadcast.
That a man is bound by law. In other words, you're bound. He's not even talking about the escape clauses. They're not relevant here. The fact that they exist is not relevant because, of course, he's got bigger fish to fry. His goal here is to simply give an example for something more important to him, and that's, of course, the whole issue of the relationship.
But I'd like to highlight something that, to be honest with you, I didn't really notice until now. In Romans chapter 7, is using a contrast of marriage language and also a covenant language.
Yes.
But it says, let's read through this again. And then we're going to go to Deuteronomy 24 and explain Deuteronomy 24 in its context legally. It says, verse 3. Where is it? Verse 3. So then, if he is joined to another man while her husband is alive, she will be called an adulteress. But if her husband dies, she is free from the law. And if she is joined to another man, she is not an adulteress. The context here is adultery. That's not the context in Deuteronomy chapter 24.
Not at all. No.
Let me read Deuteronomy 24. It says, if a man marries a woman and he does not please him because he has found something indecent in her. Can I ask something real quick on this before I give it to you?
Yeah.
So, Rico, you are correct. Deuteronomy 24, the context is not adultery, because if it were adultery, she could be stoned. This is something else that creates a circumstance that is egregious enough that in honor and shame, the man has the right, has the authority to let her go. Now, of course, Yeshua says that marriage is between a man and a woman, and it is supposed to be indissoluble, okay? Doesn't say that a man can only have one. We've already been through this, right? And we also recognize that from the previous passage we looked at in Romans chapter 7, I want to reiterate, that is your second witness to Leviticus chapter 20, verse 10. Adultery always, always, always involves a married woman. The marital status of the man is immaterial, okay? It's a married woman having relations with a man that is not her husband, okay? There is no corollary to that anywhere in Scripture, okay? A married man can take an additional wife. We see that with Jacob. We see that with Abraham. We see that with David. We see that with Moses. We see that with Gideon. There are lots of them. There are 40 named polygynists. There's only one named verifiable monogamist in all of Scripture. I'll let you men try to figure that one out, because there's only one that's verifiably monogamous. Only one. And it's not Adam.
Numbers chapter 5 talks about the bitter waters.
Yeah.
And there's a judicial procedure that had to take place if this thing happened to be. It's not like it was random. People forget that this has to now go. If you're going to give a bill of divorce, you have to see it, a part of the judicial body to ratify it, because what you talked about earlier with the dowries and her rights and all that. Says if a man marries a woman who does not please him because he has found something indecent in her, but he doesn't tell you what it is, so it's not adultery.
It's not adultery. I agree. So I don't think Numbers 5 applies here, and whatever it is, of course, as I'm sure you've studied, that word there is a hapax. It's the only time that particular word is found. Now it's related to something to do with excrement or something disgusting. And so whatever it is, he's shaming the woman.
Can I read what the Net Bible says in the commentary?
Yeah, sure.
Quite interesting. Right here, I think it was
Indecent.
or
1.
Yeah, you're right. 1, yes. It says nakedness of a thing. Hebrew phrase, "erubat davar," refers to something gross, sexual impropriety. Then you got to go indecent in Deuteronomy 23:14. Though the term usually has to do only with indecent exposure of genitals, it can also include such behavior as adultery, but it's not specific in this text.
No. And I don't think it's adultery because, of course, if it was adultery,
It's death.
That would be the death penalty. And so
Right.
whatever it is,
Correct.
it's something unpleasant. And it must be in terms of family. I wouldn't say, when I say family law, I mean, in other words, it must be cultural law that is not put in print somewhere. The expectation is I'm guessing the man has gone to the city gate and he said something like, I married Mrs. So-and-so over here, and something, she's not what I thought she was, and she's
Right.
lewd, and she's disgusting, etc. And so in other words, he's shaming her and the family. And by doing that, he's now drawing up a divorce document. But the whole point of that first part is that if you now draw up a divorce document, my argument, and the one that Raymond Westbrook has argued, and I think he's absolutely right, is that she's leaving with nothing. In other words, she's not getting compensation.
I would agree with this, that this is a situation where the man's not going to compensate her for indecentness. Now, maybe she's exposed herself to somebody else. Maybe she's, in modern vernacular, she's cruising dating websites. She's sending pictures via text. She's doing things, wearing highly exposing, highly, it's clothes that are very, I can't think of the right phrase here for things that are exposing her. The bottom line is she has the appearance of promiscuity, even if she's not actively having sexual relations with. She's having conversations with another man. Maybe she's doing things, going on, and it's in such a situation where he is not going to. It's not reining it in. Instead, he says it's time for her to go. She's got no place in my house, and I'm not giving her anything, and she's getting out.
Yeah, and by the way, that's a very important point, because it's the condition of preserving women in the ancient world, preserving the purity of the family, and the husband preserved the honor. Here, she is putting the purity of the family in question, that if she gets pregnant, no one would know if that's his child or not. This is why this was such a paramount type of decision he's making. So when I read Westbrook article, it was it was very much revealing to me how the law was conscientious of so many different angles. It's not just something so straightforward. Like for here, something that I never really caught on to until now, it's not really talking about adultery here. It's talking about indecency. And if we don't know the Torah, Professor, then it's easy for people to take only one aspect of this. But in the Torah, you have the bitter waters, which was the, for two reasons. If you thought that the laws of jealousy, you have to go there. And if it was adultery, you have to go through the procedure of penalty for that.
Right.
Let me continue here, verse 3. Verse 2. When she has left him, she may go and become another man's wife, else's wife. But
and he read it right there. She can go become another man's wife. And I think this is part of the point that they're going to go to. But the bottom line is a divorced woman, because he opened this up with a discussion from what's going on in, I think he said the Dominican Republic. Opened it up with a discussion essentially that they are having a big debate over this law that says, or this understanding in Protestant Christendom that a woman cannot be remarried, when in fact right here we have the exact example, has become someone else's wife, right? Okay. Carry on.
Already given her a bill of get. So because of, okay, if the second husband rejects her, then divorces her, rejecting here meaning to hate, other, whatever, gives her the papers and evicts her from his house. Or if the second husband who married her dies, her first husband who divorced her is not permitted to remarry her after she has become ritually impure, and that is offensive to the Lord. I made a mistake a long time ago, over expanding my theory about death, burial, resurrection of Yeshua, and I use this law to. I made a mistake, and I rectified it a long time ago, but it only goes to show you when we do not understand the context of Scripture, sometimes we over speculate on something without the proper foundation. So take a few minutes, the rest of the time, if you like, to explain legally what you are understanding on these verses based on your ancient Near Eastern experience and education.
So actually, Rico's saying that he, used this differently for the death, burial, and resurrection of Yeshua. I think he was right back then. I think he's wrong now. And I say that to make the point that we go to Jeremiah chapter 3, and I want to go back and look at this right quick just to make sure that I'm right. But Jeremiah chapter 3, at the very beginning, it specifically says, God says, if a husband divorces his woman and she goes from him and belongs to another man, will he still return to her? Will not the land be completely polluted? But you are a harlot with many lovers. Yet you turn to me, declares Yahweh. Lift up your eyes to the bare heights and see. Where have you not been violated? So on and so forth. Goes through some of that stuff. On down in verse 4, you have not just now called to me, my father. You are the friend of my youth. Will he be angry forever? Will he be indignant? Have I done evil? So on and so forth. The point being that the context for Jeremiah chapter 3 is Deuteronomy 24, and that's exactly what Paul is calling on when he talks about the fact that the woman, she's released from that law, and I believe it is this law where she was sent away. Instead of being stoned, killed for adultery, the Father graciously let her go under the Deuteronomy 24 law and divorced her and sent her away. He's very specific in Jeremiah chapter 3, verses 6 through 10. Very specific. And so that's why the Deuteronomy 24 law upholds, even though she was an adulteress. She absolutely should have been completely destroyed for her adultery. And Paul makes that point. He makes that point in Romans chapter 7. But he's also making the point that because the husband has died, she can now be, the marriage certificate that was the law that was against her can be severed, and she can be rejoined to him. So I do think Rico had it right back in the day. I think now his explanation, and they're going to head off into all kinds of hypothetical read into this passage kind of thing. And we can see it's going to be a little bit of a circus here.
The most prophesied event in all of Scripture is the restoration of Kol Israel. And that restoration begins where it always has, in the home, under proper biblical headship and authority. The Kingdom Restoration Conference is back for its second year. Join us in Knoxville, Tennessee, July 9th through 12th as we gather to study Torah, explore headship and patriarchy, and learn how to build family, clan, and tribe the way Scripture intended. This year's speakers include Aubrey and Dr. Rujane Killian, Dr. Yonatan Baruch, Teacher Pete Rambo, Mike Allen of Digging in the Word, Ryan Ridgely, Jared Cheshire, and Deborah Augustine of Call for Wisdom, presenting and leading breakout sessions to guide you toward the restoration of Kol Israel. Seating is limited to just 200 participants, so don't wait. Register today at kingdomrestorationconf.com, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, well, let's go. So why don't you put the passage back up so we can, address it. So here's what I think is going on. And again, this is not my original thoughts. It's Mr. Westbrook, who, by the way, I think I brought him up before. He was a lawyer who was also an ancient Near Eastern student. And so not only did
So?
he study ancient Near Eastern law, he put, he was in practice himself. And so it'd be like somebody studying, I suppose, ancient plumbing, but he's also a plumber on the
I
side.
got you.
And so he was amazing at this, and the few interactions I had with him were always very kind. And so the point is that so guy number one has divorced her, but he's also shamed her, and I think the implication is that she gets nothing. So she's left, and she's now a terrible burden. She either has no family or the like, and so husband number one has done that. Husband number two. By the way, this is all highly theoretical.
There you go.
It's almost unrealistic. In other words,
okay, here we go. He just admitted that what they're going into is highly theoretical and almost unrealistic. Those are his words.
How often would something like this happen? Once in a blue moon, in my opinion. So she's gone. She now, by the way, because of this, like any other situation, if there's a divorce, the assumption is you can get remarried. That's the ancient Near Eastern idea. It's clearly the Hebrew idea is that for whatever reason, in other words, if the divorce was illegitimate, that you're already paying heavy consequences. If it was adultery, you die. And
That's right.
And so if there's a divorce, that's already been established. Like I said, typically, if a woman gets divorced, she's going to be compensated for it. And they couldn't even imagine that a woman would want to divorce. In fact, of course, the later rabbinical tradition is that women couldn't get divorced. And I even looked at
I would argue that's not a rabbinical tradition. I think rather the rabbis did hold to and understand properly what the Torah allows. There's no place where, think about it this way. It's a master-bondservant relationship. Can the bondservant just say, hey, don't want to be a bondservant anymore. Got to go. I'm out. No. You're the property of. You belong to. You can't walk away. You don't. It's not in your cards that you hold in your hand as an option. You can't play the I'm leaving now card because it's not in your hand. You don't have that option. Okay? And that's one of the great problems in Western civilization today is that we've given this card to women that says, if you're unhappy, if your feels are bad, if you're not getting the new Lexus every year like you think you deserve or whatever, you're not getting the vacations to Aruba or whatever you think you deserve, you can just divorce the man and take half his stuff. No. Okay? It's not there in Scripture. Woman does not have the authority within Scripture to initiate the divorce. She does not.
An isolated passage in Josephus in his Antiquities, I think it's book 15, where he talks about, I think, Herod and somebody else, where the woman decided to get divorced. And he said, in our Jewish laws, women don't get divorced. They can't. He just sort of mentions it. But so here in this case, the woman is now attached to another man. How does this happen? Whatever reason. By the way, she probably is going to be you think about it, if she gets married to another man, she's probably gonna, it's unlikely, socially speaking, you're thinking, how is this going to work out? She has nothing. And it means that she's probably going into the situation. But the point is, she's going to get some sort of compensation by getting married.
Yeah. Can I mention something about the Code of Hammurabi here so people can get a better understanding of the difference between the way God establishes his Torah as a apodictic formula, in which adultery becomes part of the treaty format, which is not the same in the Hammurabi or any other ancient law code. Punishment, and you've done a good job teaching me, Professor. You see that? I'm a good student. Tell me. Okay. Punishment.
All right.
Punishment for breaches of marriage law were severe. In the Old Testament, adultery was a capital crime. Though in Mesopotamia, the death penalty was not mandatory. Unlike in the Torah, right? The guilty parties were bound together and drowned.
The death penalty in the Torah is not mandatory either. Okay? Now, we often think that it is. The death penalty is the maximum, or any penalty given in the Torah is a maximum penalty. The head, or the husband, or the offended party, whether it's the Most High or the husband, or in the case of a thief, whoever had been robbed, there is a maximum penalty, but the offended party always has the option of extending grace and mercy, which is what we see the Most High do to the house of Israel, who committed adultery. He didn't kill them. Now, he punished them. It was ultimately banishment. It was divorce. It was all the curses that come with it, so on and so forth. But he said, I will not leave you without remnant. I will regather you, and I will restore you and return you to the land. That's not death. That's not a death penalty for adultery. And he clearly says that it's adultery. So it's false. It's a false idea that adultery was a mandatory penalty. It's the maximum penalty. And the offended party can always back off of that. And that may be part of the explanation to the application of Deuteronomy 24 to the house of Israel instead of the adultery law and the complete destruction and eradication of the house of Israel by the Most High. He would have been justified, would have been fully justified, but instead he extends grace and mercy because of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so, and Rico, that may be why ultimately Paul says it's an adultery law because they committed adultery. However, what actually gets applied is the Deuteronomy 24 law because the Most High extended mercy instead of requiring the mandatory maximum. It's not mandatory. No penalty in the Torah is mandatory as a penalty. It's always the maximum penalty that can be applied, and the offended party can forgive, can walk it back, can allow grace and mercy, and that's always the case.
The law, the bitter waters, the ancient Near Eastern version of the bitter waters. If, however, the wife was captured, went to live with, let me read this again. However, the wife of a captured man went to live with another man because she had no other means of support. She was not guilty of adultery and could not return to her husband if he returned. Yes. That's quite interesting.
Yes, very interesting.
Well, this and this really supports both biblically and in Akkadian law. It really supports the legal system and the social network to protect the woman as being rooted in family and family law. Okay, so yes, she could return to her husband and and he could take her back. However, he may choose to say, no, I don't, stay there. Maybe he doesn't blame her. Maybe she now has children with the other. Maybe he doesn't want the shame of the time that he spent and having to deal with and, causing shame and hurt to the family. Whatever else, he can leave her there. Okay. I suspect. Now, that's not written right here, but I'm most certain that would probably be allowed. Or he can say, no, she's mine and I'm taking her back. I would think, though, that might be a little bit acrimonious in terms of saying, why didn't you wait for me, right? And I can see that. I served in the military. I've been on long deployments, and I have seen horrible things happen to soldiers' families while they were gone, okay? I was blessed not to. I didn't have a family at any point in the military until just the last couple of years, last year, 18 months or something like that, when I was married to Kelly. Different story, okay? Anyway.
If cases where poverty were not an issue, the woman was guilty of adultery and drowned.
Yeah. In fact, usually it's they look at the grain silo. If there's grain in the silo, you're stay put. If you have no grain and your husband's missing, then you can go attach yourself.
I did not know that.
Otherwise she has no means of support. And of
Wow,
course,
that's cool.
in
The
in
code,
in the unlikely event that the man is returns,
yeah.
then he gets his family back.
Let me read a few more because I think this is important for the better context of Deuteronomy 24 to contrast it with ancient legal codes, codes of in the ancient world. The Code of Eshnunna, a collection of laws written by Akkadian, your favorite language, and dating around 1900 BC, includes stipulations about marriage and adultery. By the way, this is a really good book, Boker, the Law and Administration.
Ah, okay.
I like that book. I don't know if you know about it. I'm pretty sure you do.
Yeah.
Do you like the book?
I'm aware of it. It is from what I remember, it's fine. Yes.
Yeah, I read it. I really got a lot out of it. It says one case is strikingly similar to Deuteronomy 22, verse 25 to 27. If a man brings a bride wealth for a daughter of a man, but another without consent of her father and mother abducts her and then deflowers her, he sleeps with her, it is indeed a capital offense. He shall die, right?
Yeah.
And this is important to stop and ponder the fact that it's not that the Torah is written according to Akkadian law. It's that God's laws are in the hearts of man. And I mean, we're 1900 years at that point. 1900? No, it's going to be which we're 2,000 years from Adam, but I believe that Adam had all of the Torah, and I believe it was passed through the patriarchs, and there were others who had access to this. And so the foundation of the Code of Hammurabi, as well as others, is going to have elements that come straight out of the original Torah that Adam had. Okay, we see it written by Moses. However, Moshe on multiple occasions is saying, remember, right? He's the first one that talks about Shabbat. We see, Exodus chapter 16. We see all of these other situations in the book of Genesis that indicate that they had the whole Torah, right? Lots of different pointers to that.
In this scenario, the man is subject to the death penalty for rape, the violation of a woman who was engaged to be married to another man. Since he abducts her, which is robbery or kidnapping that the Bible talks about in the commandments, the sex is treated as non-consensual.
Right.
Similarly, the Code of Hammurabi, another Akkadian legal collection dating to, as you know, condemns a man who
1700
forced
BC.
himself on a woman who was engaged yet still living in her father's house.
Right.
Anyway, so I think I found it really interesting. Oh, here we go. Code of Hammurabi, Code of Eshnunna states that if a woman is married and is then found with another man, presumably of her own volition, it is adultery. If he concludes the contract of a nuptial feast for her father and mother and marries her, she is indeed his wife. The day she is seized in the lap of another man, she shall die. She shall not live. Isn't that similar to what we're reading here in Deuteronomy 24?
Yeah, it's not similar to Deuteronomy 24. It's similar to Deuteronomy chapter 22, where specifically, if she is consensual, she belongs to another man, it is adultery. She can die. Okay, I guess the part that you're understanding is being connected to is this thing of uncleanness, but right here it's calling that very uncleanness found in the lap of another man. Is that euphemistic language for more than simply sitting in his lap or being affectionate with him? I guess that would be something I'd have to look into.
Yes, I think so. I absolutely that. And so whatever the case is in Deuteronomy 24, she's done something, but it's not to the point of adultery, and it's probably early in the marriage. In other words, she's probably done something. In other words, we're not compatible, or she's just gross. Even the rabbis later on said it could have been burnt toast, which is going a little too far. But the point is, for some.
And that goes back to the discussion between Hillel and Shammai that is brought to Yeshua in Matthew chapter 19. Some of the ones that bring it, are essentially coming for not egregious, but for really mundane kind of reasons to cast the woman out. She burned my toast. And Yeshua's going, guys, this is ridiculous. It's the hardness of your heart that you're doing that.
For some reason, he decides to divorce her and he sends her out with nothing. That means in this unlikely scenario, she gets attached to another man, but she's a marriage equal. And so if he decides, by the way, when it says he hates her, that's basically rejecting her. It's not,
Right.
it's not an emotional thing. He's choosing that he doesn't want to be married to her any longer. Now she's going to get full compensation because the writer does not go to great pains to tell you any of the other details, because now you assume it's just normal. Because everyone knows if there's a divorce, there's usually equal compensation. By the way, there's usually a prenuptial agreement in a marriage contract, which would make us, we would be a little nervous about this. Can you imagine getting married and on the day you're getting married, you're also talking about, by the way, if this doesn't work out, you're going to get half, or, I just want to make sure that you know that you're going to get all your valuables that you have and all that nice jewelry, etc. You're going to get it.
Prenuptial agreement.
Yeah, and of course we would be offended by it. Wait a minute. Why are you thinking of this not working out? That's terrible. But of course, since these are two families making, in many respects, one of the most important decisions of their existence, because of course, when a father has a daughter, that means he's in a sense giving her her dowry and her inheritance.
Why do we have a problem with this idea of a marriage contract or covenant that is essentially a prenuptial? Why do we have a problem with that? Why? I don't understand that, because we absolutely are dealing with a culture today where if men don't have a prenuptial, they're in deep problems. Potentially in deep problems. As soon as the woman's unhappy, as soon as somebody else catches her eye, hypergamy, she wants to move up the ladder a little bit. The doctor at the office, kind of showed me a little affection, and so now it's an opportunity for me to move up in the world, whatever. No. Marriage contracts or covenants of the ancient world should be the standard for what we look at today in order to ensure that families stay together. She should come into it with an understanding, and we're that way with the Most High, are we not? We come and say, all you say, we will do. And he says, I'm going to bless you. I will bless you as long as you obey these rules and operate according to my covenant. But if you don't, I am going to curse you. This is what you're going to get. You're going to get, A, B, C, and D. And we shouldn't have a problem with that. If modern culture functioned that way, we'd be a whole lot better off. We really would. But no, we want to do things Greco-Roman way. That way we can dissolve marriages and move on to another woman and have serial monogamy. It's just soft polygyny. But
he's giving it right here and now. He doesn't give it to her when he dies like he does with his sons. He's giving it to her, giving it to her right now.
Right.
And so she's getting all this.
Do you think that's because today in the modern world, people don't realize that marriage back in the day was a contract?
Yes.
Today it's like, oh, I love you, I'm in love with you, and then you fall out of love 2 years later, and there's no cost to what you decided to do.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the reason why in the Dominican Republic, they have taken such a strong stance against divorce to the point of connecting with salvation in some cases.
Oh, yeah, that's ridiculous.
Would you mind if I read a little bit of something that my logos? I have this particular tool that is like, this is like the AI within my logos program. It searches on my books. And it says, the Court of Hammurabi, a wife accused of infidelity, could defend herself through an oath or deal.
Yeah.
If caught with a lover, she could be bound and drowned. Though the husband's mercy toward his wife could extend to sparing the male.
Exactly what I said a second ago. That stoning for adultery was not mandatory. It's the maximum penalty the husband can. Now, he's demonstrating this through the Code of Hammurabi, but we can demonstrate, in the Torah, and we can demonstrate with how Yahweh dealt with the house of Israel, who he said, you're an adulteress. You are out gallivanting around the whole 9 yards. He didn't destroy her utterly. Instead, he judged her and ultimately will restore and bring her back.
The male partners as well.
Yeah, one or both. Yeah. Yes.
One or both, but the Torah doesn't give you that option. It says, no, you're both gone. It says, the code also recognized grounds for divorce beyond infidelity, including an unwifely attitude and extravagance. That's quite interesting.
Yes.
So really,
wasting
what is
his
the
resources
point that the book of Deuteronomy 24 is trying to convey to us? Because now, if we don't connect ancient Near Eastern laws, it's really not going to make any sense to us today.
Yeah, because it's really not a divorce law. Divorce is happening in the situation, but the point here really, I think the main character in this law is man number one, in my opinion.
I think it absolutely is a divorce law. It's written exactly that way and trying to import the Code of Hammurabi in order to explain it and then to make circus attempts, as you're about to do, is a total injustice to the text and to the fact that these are the words of the Most High. But go ahead. Let's see what you got. Have you been searching for deeper understanding of biblical family structure? We were once where you are, full of questions, seeking answers in Scripture. That's why we created this special community, a place where seekers become family, where questions meet experience, and where biblical teachings come alive. Join us on Patreon and discover private discussions in our Telegram groups, real conversations about family and headship, a supportive community that grows together, and direct access to experienced mentors. Whether you're just starting your journey or deepening your understanding, we're here to walk alongside you. Take the first step. Join our family today, and let's grow together in understanding and fellowship. Shalom, and welcome home.
Because you look at it, think about it. Okay, the second husband has divorced her. We're not told anything about it. In other words, it's probably just a garden variety divorce. And what happens in a garden variety divorce? Wife gets compensated. So that means the wife who had been rejected for the first time, this time she's divorced, but she has her compensation for her. Okay, so she's probably in pretty good economic sense. That means husband number one might be looking at her now and saying, wow, she looks a lot better now because she's got a lot more. So in other words, I think it's obvious to the reader of the late Bronze Age, but not to us. You know, we look at it and say, well, of course he can't get married to her. That's terrible. Why isn't it?
He can't get married to her again because we don't know whose seed it is. That's why. If you understand telegeny and you go study a little bit on what happens when a man's seed enters a woman, some of that stays. And when she goes on to the next one, some of that stays. And then he comes back and now his lineage is potentially crossed up with. Yahweh says, that's an abomination in the land. Don't do it. But you've got this great idea here and all this circus stuff and... This is total eisegesis. It's eisegeting in a fanciful idea in order to try to make it not say what it actually says.
It's because he's now going to be making a financial killing. And I looked up the legal word from Old French is estoppel, which means a stopper, where what he's basically doing is that never mind, the reason that she was indecent is no longer applies any longer because she looks a lot better to me now because she's got more money. And so I can remarry her, which of course means he's just doubled his estate. He kicked her out for nothing. And now he's bringing her back and she's got, in other words, the
gymnastics and eisegesis here are absolutely laughable. This is hysterical, really. I laughed out loud when I heard him go through this the first time.
He made 100% profit
After shaming her.
Yes, after shaming her. And of course, why would she do that? Well, this is all theoretical, but evidently there must have been a case study where somebody actually did this. And you're thinking, why would this be in the Bible? It's in the context, if you think about it, because there's always a reason why a passage is before another passage. If you look at the end of Deuteronomy 23 and 24 and the beginning of 25, it's ripping your neighbor off. In other words, you're supposed to be your neighbor.
Let me actually, you know what? That's a good idea. Sometimes we don't do that enough. Allow me, Professor, to read the previous verses from verse 19 in regards to property. Okay, it says, you must not charge interest on a loan of your fellow Israelite, whether on money, food, or anything else that has been loaned with interest. It's dealing with interest and money. It says you may lend with interest to a foreigner. That's because there's no covenantal obligation here, but not to a fellow Israelite. If you keep this commandment, the Lord your God will bless you in all you undertake in the land and that you are about to enter to possess. When you make a vow to the Lord your God, you must not delay in fulfilling it, for otherwise he will surely hold you accountable as a sinner. If you refrain from making a vow, it will not be sinful. Whatever you vow, you must be careful to do with what you have promised, such as what you have vowed to the Lord your God as a freewill offering. When you enter the vineyard of your neighbor, you may eat as a grapes as you please, but you must not take any away any of it in a container. When you go into a ripe grain field of your neighbor, you may pluck the kernels with your hand. You must not use a sickle on your neighbor's ripe grain. It's talking about, taking away, defrauding, or stealing.
Right.
And then it goes right into the whole context of, and then it's interesting because it goes into human dignity in verse 8, after the whole kidnap.
So again, these guys are working hard here to try to turn this away into something that's just a really specific case about just a man. It's the man's fault. A man casting his woman out, and then, oh, look, now she's got an inheritance and a pocket full of money from some other guy who dies, and I can take her back. I think it's gross stretching at this point to try to get away from what the passage just basically says. The passage is very basic, very straightforward. And divorce is not a pretty thing. And they would agree with that. But I think we really have to twist the text and work on the text really hard right here to make sure that it doesn't say what it actually says. And it's pretty simple. If a man finds indecency or uncleanness, and he sends his woman out, gives her a certificate of divorce, and she goes and gets married, and then whether she's divorced again or is widowed, he can't take her back. She can go marry somebody else, but he can't take her back. Period. End of story. We don't need to go into all of this extra stuff here to say it's really about trying to get some other man's stuff. I think that is, we're headed into clown world here.
In verse 10, be careful, do an outbreak of leprosy and follow precisely all the Levitical priests I have commanded you. It's quite interesting, the structure that we never think about.
Yeah, and then look at verse 10. When you make a loan and you take his coat, you got to give his coat back to him during the night. In other words, you're right. You're protecting the dignity of the other person. And I think Deuteronomy 24, 1-4 is doing the same thing. You're not ripping your neighbor off. You're not. And by the way, you know who the victim is in 24? It's the woman. The woman has been taken advantage of.
If the man is putting her away for some frivolous reason, burned her toast, yes, it's the woman. But if she indeed has acted indecently, as most of the women today do, he's perfectly justified. She's not the victim. She needs to be cast out. Talking to other men, she's in the marketplace, was in the back room with the merchant at Hanuk's Olive Shop or whatever. Come on, let's be smart here. But no, it's all about protecting the woman.
In a sense,
Right.
when you read 24:1, you're assuming that by what happens, that was unjust. That even if he found something indecent, he should be probably doing what, let's say, Joseph does to Mary. In Matthew 1, he's as far as he knows, well, she's pregnant, and it's not me. I know that. And so what does he do? An honorable man, he tries to put her away privately. Why does he do that? So her family and her, they're not shamed.
Oh, time out. Wait, stop. Let's stop right here. That's adultery. She's pregnant. It's adultery. Shouldn't she be stoned? That's mandatory. Shouldn't she be stoned? Oh, no. Now we're going to involve Deuteronomy 24 as a legitimate outworking to protect the woman's honor and dignity and the family. I get it. That's exactly what Yahweh did. This is why this passage applies directly to Romans chapter 7. Rico, there's your example right there. He just gave it to you. Professor Mark, Dr. Mark, whatever. Yeah. There's your example right there. The truth is that we do need justice and we need judging rightly. And in the case of the man here, if the indecency that she's had is legitimate, he has every right to let her go. And he does not have a right to take her back, according to the Torah. Period. End of story. Doesn't matter how much money's involved, what he gives her, doesn't give her, anything else. He can't take her back. It does protect the woman in that she has the ability to go marry again. Yes, it's written right there in the Torah. She can go marry again. She just can't ever come back to the first husband. Period. End of story. This is, y'all make this way more complicated than it needs to be. But, of course, we've got to go back to polygyny here in a few minutes. It's coming back up because these guys just can't leave it alone. And they'll demonstrate again that their bias and Greco-Roman goggles remain firmly in place.
Absolutely, yeah. We have all these examples. So when I study this, I see that there is grounds that the Bible does allow divorce.
Mm-hmm.
The problem that we have is sometimes we assume that a lot of this is going to be a little controversial. So I want you guys to hear me out. The biblical Torah laws, many of them, including marriage, in the sense of morality, you can apply that everywhere.
Yes.
But the laws of marriage in each country are different. And I think, and I had to reevaluate this position because I used to think differently. But you cannot apply marriage laws that were given to Israel as a constitution in the land under theocracy.
Wait. Earlier, you said that the Torah is the standard for all times and all peoples for morality and for righteousness and for holiness. Did you not say that, Rico? Did you not say? Now you're backing up, beep, 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 beep. You're backing up the truck. Because, well, the marriage laws don't really apply in our culture today, even though Yahweh wrote them into the Torah. Don't call yourself a Torah teacher. You're not a Torah teacher. You teach what's comfortable for you. And you back away from what's uncomfortable for you. And then you insert the traditions of men so that you don't have to deal with actually putting your pants on and standing in front of a congregation and saying, no. The scriptures never say, they never call polygyny sin. It's not there. Yahweh breathes not one word. I'm telling you what, these guys, I'm telling you, watch your teachers. This is what they do in one word. And here he does it in one teaching. Oh, this is, the Torah is the standard. He did it. He did it a while back. I pointed it out when he did it. And I told you this moment was coming right here.
And apply in the United States when we have marriage laws here. and judging someone according to those things. Now, again, it's interesting that adultery, which is moral in nature, has carried a penalty in the Bible was severe. We cannot do that today because you need the adulterer and the adulteress, and then you have to have the witnesses, and then that's only a judicial matter on the Sanhedrin, a body of judges, right?
Where does it say that's only a judicial matter under the Sanhedrin? Could you please point me to that verse there, Rico? Now, I noticed that you're wearing a pendant that has the 12 stones of Israel, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that you believe yourself to be of the house of Levi. But now you're saying, oh, well, yeah, we don't really have to use the Torah to judge something. What we have to do is we have to use the laws of the land to judge something. So you're making up multiple things here. You're claiming the Sanhedrin has to make the ruling. But you're also claiming that since we're not in the land, that the Torah doesn't apply. And I know you're going to say, well, you're going to take him out and stone him? No, I already said that's the maximum penalty, but the man can choose otherwise. The offended party can choose otherwise. Trust me. Trust me, bro. No, we get back into the land, this law will apply in its fullness. And if the man says, no, I am not having this in my house, and she is not going to do this to anybody else ever, ever, ever again. The adulterer and the adulteress, stone him. And if that happens in the land, under the Messiah's rule, no less, the stoning will happen. And quite frankly, I don't ever want to have to be a part of that because it seems like it would be a horrible thing. But if it happened one time, word would get around and people wouldn't commit adultery. Because if you get caught, you know it's going to be a really, really bad day. But I also pointed out right here, Rico, nowhere does it say this has to go to the Sanhedrin. It doesn't. It's the elders in the gates of the local town. It's the family patriarchs for those. So, adding to the Torah and taking away from it. Oh, those laws don't apply because we don't live there. You know, in terms of a man can have more than one wife, or we embrace the laws of marriage here, even though the Torah was written 5,000 plus years prior, 4,500 years before the local laws of marriage. This country.
But it's interesting that these laws still carry weight in every culture for compensation and grounds for divorce. Anyone who commits adultery, they usually have a penalty based if they get found out and there's divorce matters. But the law itself, like it's here, you cannot apply in the United States.
Well, in fact, I don't even know how you apply that because like I think I want to argue is that it's not even a divorce law to begin with. There happens to be a divorce in the account. And think about it. If there were fasting in that account, that would not tell me, well, since somebody is fasting in a law, I should be fasting. In other words, that doesn't follow.
No, it's a law. It's a law that says if this circumstance happens, the man is supposed to react this way. Certificate of divorce and send her away. And then if the circumstance continues that she goes on and gets married to another and he sends her away, has to give her a certificate of divorce, or he dies, now she's free to remarry, the law says she cannot return to the original man that divorced her. That is a law. This is not a tangential connection of divorce with a separate law. It's a divorce law, period. You're not a judge because you can't read the law.
There are other reasons for fasting, but just because they happen to be in an example is irrelevant. If I really want to think about divorce, think about what Jesus says about the ideal. The ideal is here. The ideal is one man and one woman. And then he gives you the extenuating circumstances.
So again, we come back to this ideal. But is the ideal commanded? Where's the command? What's the penalty for violating the command? Oh, there is no command. It's your interpretation of a passage that defines what a marriage looks like, and it does not, nor anywhere else in Scripture ever, does it prevent a man from having more than one wife. So you're reading into, you're eisegeting your cultural understanding into Genesis chapter 2, and because Yeshua's not talking about polygyny, he's not even talking about divorce. He's not even talking about divorce in Matthew chapter 19. He's talking about sending away unlawfully. He's talking about sending away unlawfully. Go back. The word is sending away, because he says, how do you read Moses? And they say, Moses said, send away and give her a certificate of divorce. And there we see there's two different Greek words. And they're distinguishing. What they originally asked was sending away. They didn't ask about divorce. And Yeshua is saying you shouldn't be doing either one. That wasn't the original. The original design was not for divorce to be part of the picture. However, the hardest of your hearts. But don't marry, and don't send away a woman without giving her a certificate of divorce, and don't marry a woman that's sent away that does not have a certificate of divorce. But we see from the Deuteronomy passage that she can legitimately be remarried if she has both pieces. She can't be simply separated and not divorced. That's adultery, because she's still married.
And so when he's looking at, when he talks about the Moses law here, he's really going against their perversion of interpretation of it. In other words, they took a very particular law that happened to have divorce in the law, and they made it their datum point for all divorces. And so since it doesn't say a woman can divorce a man, the rabbis argued women can't divorce men because it doesn't say they can. But
no, women can't divorce men because they operate as they're the property of, they belong to. Hard concept for Western civilization, but it's borne out in spades all the way through Scripture. The man is the head, the man is the authority. She is part of his house. They're not equals. They're not they're not in an equal relationship. It's not. It's never been. It wasn't with Adam, and it's never been since then, though man tries to force that to happen. And it goes sideways every single time.
of course,
Yeah.
in other words, they took a law that was specific and they made it into a generic statement about divorce in general. And but I can sympathize with the first century legal experts, because if you think about it, the laws are not comprehensive. They were there to deal with particular situations that families probably didn't know what to do with. And so now God is now presenting, all right, you guys know what to do in general with most things. So I've given you the 10 Commandments. Now most of these laws are oddball situations. They're situations that don't happen very often. And so, and they're not easily understood by the basic parameters that we have in the 10 Commandments. And so they're all particular. The problem is they took those particulars and they made them generic, and Jesus is speaking against that.
Well, this is the thing. It's like some people object that we study, like I study Mishnah and I look into a lot of the rulings and temple studies and Leviticus. Some of the things in the book of Leviticus have no explanation.
Right.
You need to go back, and the corpus of the priest will get together and say, well, this is what holiness is. And that's why when you go from the wilderness all the way into the Second Temple period, they held together the essence of holiness, but they had to adapt with certain rituals because there was either more people, they had to do more things, but the essence of the commandment still was kept. In regards to marriage, I truly believe Yeshua is dealing with an issue within that first century of the house of Shammai, the house of Hillel. Right. They had different views. And by the way, there were Pharisaic interpretations at that moment. He's not even dealing with the Pharisees, because the Sadducees. Because the Sadducees were priests, and they're already limited with certain rules. The Torah already told them. It was like not even that's not even a topic to the Sadducees. If they're priests, they needed to have a higher level of holiness and requirements for them to do their service. Whether people think it's corruption or not is irrelevant. The thing is, the laws are very strictly outlined for the priests in regards to marriage, who to marry. I mean, it's very strict. But then Yeshua's addressing the house of Shammai he led, in which one says, well, if your wife burns your food, then you can have grounds for divorce. And then Shammai says, no, unless it's for sexual immorality. I mean, talk about trying to resolve and trying to outline in a detailed way something that has been throughout millennia in Israel dealt with in the dispersion of Babylon with that influence, the Hellenization of Israel later on, and the Greco-Roman world being free and do whatever with all the sexual behavior. I mean, we have all these arguments and we never put ourselves in their place trying to interpret these things. Yeshua, I think, is bringing them back to the essence of the Torah, to have it.
Yes, Yeshua's mission for everything is to bring them back to the essence of the Torah. They're trying to trap him here. And we've been round and round on this, okay? They're trying to trap him right here with a ruling, because they didn't give him the whole ruling, certificate of divorce and send away. Instead, they say just send away. So it's a trap that they're setting. It doesn't have anything to do with him needing to correct them on specifics of the marriage law. Divorce is part of it. It's there. It's unfortunate. It's something that, sometimes things just go sideways. But at the end of the day, it required something, an indecency in her, and he could indeed send her away. She could not remove herself from the situation and be divorced and free to go somewhere else. She had to deal with the consequences. If she left, she had to deal with the consequences of being a sent away woman who does not have a certificate of divorce and cannot be remarried. Only with that certificate of divorce could she be remarried. So,
to have righteousness and to have integrity in the decision you make.
And really, maybe I'll try to paraphrase what he ends up doing. He says, well, it's a heart issue. In other words, you're asking whether you can divorce your wives. And of course, the answer is, why are you even asking that question? In other words, you're asking a wrong question. You should be thinking about what the ideal is. And oh, by the way, if and Moses gave it to you because of your hardness of heart. And so really, and of course, he's talking to the males here because they're the ones that can get, that can initiate the divorce in Judaism. But of course, when you look at, I think it's in the book of Luke, where he also talks about women shouldn't divorce either, because of course, a woman could divorce in the Roman world. But the point is, you're asking the wrong question. You should be talking about the ideal of marriage. He doesn't discount the fact that yes, divorce is possible under certain circumstances. And of course, Paul gives us a circumstance that would not have been relevant for Jesus' time. He's talking about the fact now you have believers later on, and if they're married to non-believers, they should stay there. But if the non-believer wants to initiate divorce, they're allowed to. By the way, if they're set free, they're allowed to remarry.
Yeah, because exactly what you just said, in the Roman world, there was a caste system that if you're...
So before he goes into the caste system right quick, Mark made a comment just in passing as he went through that. And his comment was something to the effect of Yeshua trying to reinstitute or take us back to the creation ideal. And he keeps going back to this. And Christendom does this. The Greco-Roman law, the ideal is monogamy, right? And now you can change your woman anytime you want to, because divorce is perfectly fine within Greco-Roman law. Torah law, Hebraic law, biblical law never teaches monogamy onlyism, though they want to do this. And he's making the statement that Yeshua is trying to take them back to that ideal. Here's the problem. If Yeshua is claiming that that's the ideal that they're supposed to be adhering to, then by definition, he is nullifying certain laws that regulate polygyny. And by definition, then, he is not the Messiah because he is nullifying commands, subtracting from. Yeshua can't be saying the ideal is monogamy. Because if he is, he's sinning. And he's calling Abraham a sinner. He's calling Jacob a sinner. He's calling the Most High, who describes himself as the husband of two brides, a sinner. Yep. Mark, in the comments, he said, "Oh, but that's a metaphor." Does God use metaphors that are sinful to describe himself? Does he? Find me one. Does he use a sinful metaphor to describe himself? I want to know. Where does he call this sin? Where does he ever, even once, where does he call it sin? But we're still going to throw the patriarchs under the bus one more time.
Slave. I mean, there's not much you can do. You pretty much, you kind of stuck. I mean, can you imagine you have you married as slaves, but one of the slaves believes in Yeshua, right? And well, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? If he's not objecting of you following Yeshua, and you're both servants under a Roman master, just do your thing. Because what is your other option? We never think about the caste system of Rome.
Right.
When we were talking about what Paul is trying to deal with in Corinth and deal with in Ephesus.
There's a caste system within Israel too. Okay, there is a legitimate, and it's not in a negative. We see this. We see the high priest, and then we see the sons of Aaron, and then we see the Levitical priesthood, and then we see the tribes, and then we see the rest of the world outside of that. So there is that. We also see laws that specifically take care of man, take care of woman, but also the woman is always subordinate to and under the headship and authority of a man, whether it's her father or her brother or her husband. We don't see it's a caste system. And then you've also got bondservants, you've got children, you've got it. So this idea that, Rome's got that, but we don't. No.
In the Asia Minor and so on and so forth.
Yeah, we have to look at the context first, and that's hard.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for your time. It was great. I really enjoyed this one. I
Yeah.
think I'm understanding it better.
Yeah, but
I've only asked it 20 times.
well, that's all right. But if there are loose ends, it's because it's not a simple issue. But like I said, if I could summarize, it's to go to the Matthew passage and of course Jesus looking at it and saying, all right, here's the ideal. The ideal trumps everything else. The ideal is, one man and one woman. Of course, there.
You keep saying that. But it's not what he's saying. He is not throwing the patriarchs under the bus. In fact, he says, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob will be seated in the kingdom. And, y'all's implication earlier that polygyny is somehow some form of adultery. Yeshua says they'll be in the kingdom. Paul says adulterers won't be in the kingdom. We got a problem. That's one of multiple threads within your thought process that if you start pulling on it, your thought process comes unglued. Another one is, where is the commandment that polygyny is sin? Where is the commandment? Bring me the commandment, please. Show me where God calls it sin.
Polygamy in the Bible. Why? How was that practiced in the ancient Near East? On the contrast with the Torah, because the Torah doesn't necessarily forbids it, polygamy in the Bible. The Torah doesn't necessarily forbids it, polygamy in the Bible. The Torah doesn't necessarily forbids it. The Torah doesn't necessarily forbids it. The Torah doesn't necessarily forbids it.
I'll be waiting. I'd love to have a discussion. I can probably even do it without being animated and acrimonious, but I'm telling you, I'm so tired of Torah teachers who avoid this subject like the plague. It terrifies you. Cowards is what you become. Watch.
Yes, there are extenuating circumstances, but you should be dwelling on the union rather than the disunion, is what he argues.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because I think when he's saying, and to Adam and Eve, that's the way it was. In other words, that's the original plan. Throughout history, I mean, well, who was it? The one who established more than one wife? Wasn't that the son of who was it? Oh Lord,
Lamech,
son of Cain.
Oh yes, right.
You know,
son of Cain. Have you ever stopped to read that passage? Have you gone and read that passage? You recognize that Jubal and Tubal Cain and forget the name of the other, Zillah and Adah's sons actually make contributions to all of mankind, the father of all who do this. How do you become the father of all who do this? Artificers of of metallurgy, I want to say sheep and goats are those. It's not those who dwell in tents. How do you become that? Oh, one of your daughters winds up married to Noah or one of Noah's sons on the ark. Interesting. Very interesting. Why are we given that information? We're not given that information to throw Lamech under the bus. We're given that information because there's something that happens here that the Father says is important. And he doesn't speak ill of Lamech. Says nothing negative about Lamech. He's actually a prophet. He, Rico, castle doctrine. Where's the first place in Scripture you see the castle doctrine? Cortes combat systems. Do you ever teach on the castle doctrine? I'll bet you do. I'll bet you know the castle doctrine well, and probably by state in the U.S. Where does that come from? Oh, Lamech. But no, we got to throw him under the bus.
Amen. And every instant in the Bible where a man has more than one wife, there's always chaos.
Oh, yeah, let's throw Abraham under the bus there. Let's throw Jacob under the bus. You can't show me where God calls it sin, and you can't show me where there's a single negative word about the marriage structure. You can show me where people's hearts are revealed. You can show me where people do things they shouldn't do, like, oh, the children of the monogamous marriage, Cain and Abel. Yeah, that's murder. Or monogamous marriage, Adam and Eve cast all of humanity into sin and death. But no, we're going to throw them under the bus. Now we're going to show everybody that who really runs our house.
Tribulation. And I'm just happy to have one. You know how difficult it is to keep one happy forever?
Well, there you go, guys. That right there is the story. That right there is the story.
And I'm just happy to have one. You know how difficult it is to keep one happy forever? And I'm just happy to have one. You know how difficult it is to keep one happy forever? You know how difficult it is to keep one happy forever? You know how difficult it is to keep one happy forever?
Who's the man of the house if he's got to work to keep her happy? Is that what Yeshua does for the ecclesia? He runs around trying to keep her happy. You know how much work this is to keep her happy? It's a travesty. It's a travesty that Torah teachers have so little understanding of marriage and so little understanding of what Scripture says about it. They are well versed in Greco-Roman doctrine and Catholic doctrine. They're well versed in those things. They don't really know and embrace or care what Scripture says, particularly the Torah. Here we go. Last
Why
words.
people want to get themselves in so much chaos?
Well,
Rico, my house is a peaceful place. There's no chaos in my house. And I have more than one. I'm a blessed man. I'm a very blessed man. I really am. When you are the head of your house and you train your house properly, you teach the word, you wash them in the water of the word, you don't have chaos. So
that's absolutely true. And so I think that, again, we need to ask the right questions about this.
yeah, we do. And you haven't.
And it's not always easy.
Here's the right question. Where does God call it sin? Where does God call it sin? That's the right question. That's the right question, Mark. Until you can answer that question, you will arrive at the wrong conclusion. Only when you understand that question and you answer it correctly will you begin to unravel and understand the right solution. And it begins with an improper understanding of adultery. You think adultery goes either way, and it doesn't. Adultery always, always, always involves a married woman. I defy you to prove otherwise from the scriptures. All right, guys. We've gotten to the end, and now it's just letting everybody go. But I'm telling you what, this thing right here, I watched this the other day, and by the time I got finished, I was furious. And I put some comments up specifically to answer some of the things that they did on here. And you know what? The only comment of mine that currently shows on this video, where at the time of this recording, is the one where I showed you. Here, I'll show you one more time so that you understand. The only comment that they put up of mine is hiding dissenting comments is a form of deceit. They don't mind that being up there. They do mind me challenging them to a live public debate. They mind when myself, along with others, specifically tell them that they're wrong on this topic. They hid those comments. They hide those comments because they don't mind this right here. What they don't like is this right here. They don't like that. And they don't like my channel being present or visible in their comment section. But the bottom line is if you hide dissenting comments that come straight out of Scripture and call them into account, they hide it. And that is deceit. It's deception. It is lying. It is intentional. And there are other Torah teachers who do this. I'm telling you. David Wilbur is a classic example, and he does it to everybody. I'm happy to call him out. He's been blocking me for years. He'll teach falsehood. I can call him out and demonstrate where he teaches falsehood with regards to marriage and egalitarianism and all of this nonsense that he has. And he'll mock and everything else. He'll try to use other stuff to create dissension, red herrings, whatever. And then, and it is deceit. Just justice you shall pursue. Go read Deuteronomy 16, 18 through 20, and then look at these Torah teachers and see if you don't see a different light. It's not the light of Torah. It's deception. All right, guys. I'm telling you what, this has been really long. I have no idea how many pieces this is going to get cut up into, but it's been good and it's been worth doing. But the Torah teachers need to be called into account. You need to send this to every Torah teacher you know. They need to address this stuff. Because there's truth that they are avoiding like the plague. For King and Kingdom, I bid you shalom.